Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha, and I am an alumni from IPECA Integrated Christian School. And I'm here to talk a little bit about going to uni in Hong Kong. I'm actually from City University of Hong Kong. And I'll just talk about my university a little, and I'll also talk about my major, and just how I got where I am right now through IPECA and why I chose Hong Kong, all of that. So I hope this information session is going to be useful for some of you who's thinking about going to Hong Kong. Maybe I'll convince you to consider Hong Kong because it's really a good place to study for uni. So let me just get started. I have a list of questions here that I'm going to go through slowly and answer while I'm just telling you a little bit about myself. And first off, my major and minor. It's the simplest thing here on the list. And my major is actually mechanical engineering. And recently I declared a minor in computer science, but in CityU it is called computing. So I major in mechanical engineering and I minor in computing, and I'm in my third year. I'm going into my third year. Next week, I'm actually starting my first semester of school, my third year in school. And yeah, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about high school first before going into my major, and also about how life is like in CityU or in Hong Kong in general. So in high school, again, I went to IICS, and that's the IPECA in Maruya, if you don't know which one it is. And during high school, I would say here, ask what's my favorite subject in high school. So my favorite subject, I didn't pick either like science or business. It wasn't like IPA or IPS for me. I had to pick between like a bunch of different subjects that either could be business, it could be science. So my three picks were physics, software design, that's computer studies, and also, what's my last one? Oh, business studies. So those were my three subjects, and my favorite out of all of them is probably physics. And that's might be guessable from my major right now, which is mechanical engineering, right? And outside of school, outside my favorite subject and whatnot, my hobby, I'd say, is probably just playing music at home. And also, I like to design things. So usually if there was like a cup tournament or something at school, I'd help out with documentation or the posters and just the media and marketing materials. And I also continue that in university. So I joined a couple of student organizations here, like Model United Nations, and I also joined just some other clubs. It's very random, the clubs I joined, but I do help them with their like marketing materials and helping design different things for them, including websites. And I think that's my main hobby outside of school that I would say could be called a hobby. So the next question is, did my favorite subject, which is physics, I guess, and my hobby affected my decision to pick mechanical engineering for university? So I guess it does, because my favorite subject, physics, and my hobby, which I would say is design, a good middle between them is sort of mechanical engineering, right? It's at least, well, it leans a lot more to physics than design, but it has some aspects of design in there, and that is very hands-on. Engineering is very hands-on, especially mechanical engineering, because it has to do with like automotive parts, right? And you get to build things with your hands, and you just work with mechatronics. So that is a major influence in why I picked mechanical engineering, but I'll talk a little more about why I picked this major later. But that's a little bit about me in high school. Now, the next question is actually what I wanted to be while in high school. So like in high school, did I have a picture on what I want to take for university, right? Did I always want to take mechanical engineering? And the answer is no. I was very all over the place before my final year in high school in terms of like what I wanted to do in university. I had never had a dying urge to be a mechanical engineer. And before year 12, I probably thought about engineering at some point, but I was also thinking about a lot of other things. I was like, should I go into what? I've thought about different stuff. What architecture? I've thought about it. I've thought about design. I've also thought about, should I do computer science? I also thought about biology. I didn't even take biology in high school. I don't know why that was an option for me. Yeah, but at the end, I end up with mechanical engineering. And I'll talk a bit about that. So why I ended up picking what I pick. So why I picked mechanical engineering is because, well, first, my parents were supportive of that. You don't really know parents who hear engineering and are super against that, right? Even though my parents did prefer me to go into computer science as a major. And at the end, I did take it as a minor. So that's a little full circle moment. But I picked mechanical engineering mainly because I wanted a STEM subject at the end, because I know that STEM and science subjects has a lot of prospects in the job market. And it's just, no, I don't know. I just thought I could do, if I had to pick a job for the rest of my life, I'd rather pick something in STEM rather than personally something in business or design. I thought about design as a hobby at that point. And I was like, maybe I can just keep that as a hobby. So that's why I chose a STEM subject. I narrowed it down to STEM right now, right? But I still have a lot in STEM. There's computer science, there's like biology related sciences. There's also engineering and more physics related sciences. So from there, that's where my favorite subject came in. I was like, well, I like physics. So I guess I narrowed it further down to like the engineerings and the sciences that kind of applied physics. I thought about applied physics and industrial design also. So that's like other things I thought about. But from there, I narrowed down to mechanical engineering rather than just like, there's other types of engineering, right? There's civil, there's electrical, there's biomedical. I chose mechanical because, well, I did process of elimination from here. I crossed out electrical and a civil just because I couldn't imagine, like I didn't resonate with it as much as I did mechanical and biomedical. But at this point, I was like, should I do biomedical engineering or mechanical engineering? And from here, I actually wanted, at the time, I remember I wanted to do biomedical engineering more. And I consulted my parents, and they actually just advised me between those two to take mechanical. And I also asked a bunch of other people who I do not recall this time, but I just remember that the general advice that I got was, if I'm confused about it and I don't feel super passionately about biomedical, then mechanical is more like the safe option in that it's more broad, right? Biomedical is very specific. So if I wasn't sure about it, the mechanical kind of covers all the fundamental, like complex physics and math that I would need to apply to a lot of sectors in case I want to do something where my mechanical engineering skills, which is pretty broad, can be applied. If biomedical, at the time, it would be, I would learn engineering and physics and engineering materials very related to help in the biomedical or just the medical sector in general. So I thought, okay, that's a bit too specific for someone as confused as me in my year 12 semester 1. So at the end, I did choose mechanical engineering just because I thought it was the broadest type of engineering that I also just liked the idea of, because it was, like I said before, in the middle of design and engineering, and that I can do a lot with my hands, right? Mechanical engineering has a lot to do with labs where you can kind of work with your hands. And I'll talk a little bit about my favorite class, which relates to that in a minute. But that is a little bit on why like mechanical engineering, why I chose mechanical engineering at the time. That was a long journey, but now I come to, I'm very glad with my major choice. So what have I learned in this major so far? That's the next question. So what I've learned so far is I'm currently going to my third year, like I said, So my first 2 years was a lot of math. It was every semester I had math, and it was just like integrals and differentials getting a little bit more complex every semester, plus a lot of different ways to kind of just make these long formulas easier. Yeah, a lot of stuff for math formulas, but I think going to my third year, I know that I'm not going to have as many math subjects. So I think the first 2 years are quite math heavy. And there's also a lot of theory about mechanical systems, just mechanics and thermodynamics, a lot of physics these past 2 years. And other than those theory, there's also a lot of labs, especially this last year. So the second year, the labs start coming in quick, start coming in much thicker. They're like about engineering materials. You work a lot with microscopes and like tension machines to test the tension of different materials. You just work with a lot of different engineering machines to know, like if you go in a lab, you kind of can identify what does what. And you can use it later for your final year project, which I'll getting into next year. So in the labs, you also work a lot with machines, and that can actually make something tangible for you immediately. And by that, I mean, actually my favorite subject. It's called engineering workshop. And in there is just a bunch of machines like that you can use to mill or drill and just do different things to a metal cylinder that you will get at the start of the semester. And then you can kind of go to the different machines. You get a piece of paper of instructions on how the final metal part should look like. They give you a cylinder and it should end up like maybe like a cube or something. I didn't get a cube, but it maybe a hole in the middle and the diameter of like 10 cm. You have to make that out of just a block of metal. And when you get that at the end of the semester, when I got that, it was very rewarding. So I would say that would be my favorite subject so far, is the one where it's actually very hands-on, because I do imagine going to mechanical engineering at my first year that this is what I would like the most, and it actually is. So a lot of engineering is, to summarize, it's just math, physics, and labs that work with, you don't apply those physics immediately on, like, you don't have to count while you're, so far at least, I didn't have to count and then immediately use that to make the part. But also aside from that, I almost forgot to mention this. You also work a lot with computer aided design to design different motor parts, for example, or just machine parts. For example, they'll tell you like, how do you, this is a picture of I can't think of anything. Oh, like a bolt in, okay, sure, a sawing machine. They're gonna give you a sawing machine, like a picture of it from different angles. This is one of my recent courses, and I quite enjoyed it. It was a bit challenging, but it's one of the first ones that work with the computer. So in my engineering courses, at least. And what you do is they give you from different angles a machine, and then you have to kind of make a 3D version of it in the computer. And that will be like your assignment for the whole semester. So you just try to draw different parts seen from different angles, make that 3D. So that's also a lot to do with my major, just computer aided design. And in terms of my minor, if you're interested in computer science, those that one is very assignment heavy. My computer science courses are much more assignment heavy than my mechanical engineering courses. And I know a friend, my close friend is taking biomedical engineering here. And it's actually more assignment heavy than the mechanical engineering course. So if anyone's interested, or just like comparing and contrasting between those two, they are equally, well, my biomedical engineering here is a bit more, I'd say a bit more challenging than the mechanical engineering one, but both are quite theory heavy, and you get a lot of lab reports that you have to do across the year. But it's also very exam heavy. So For engineering, the most important part of the semester is the final exams and the midterm exams. They're like 60% of the entire semester's grades. And you also have to do some lab reports, a lot of lab reports actually throughout the semester. That's for engineering. For computer science, it's much more assignment heavy. You just do consistent assignments throughout the semester. So that is a bit on my courses in mechanical engineering and minoring in computer science in CityU. Now let me just talk a little bit more generally on why I picked CityU as a school. So why did I pick CityU, and what were the factors I considered until I finally come to the choice of CityU? So there are three big reasons why I chose CityU, I think, that I can kind of summarize it down to. So the first one is actually that they gave a really hefty scholarship, and they're very generous with their scholarships to international students. I know that a lot of my Indo friends here and a lot of international students in CityU are here on scholarship because CityU is known for being generous with their scholarships. And other than that, for scholarships, there's also, it's ranging from like half scholarship, half your tuition, to a full scholarship. And you also can get a total scholarship. And that one is when it covers your tuition, plus it gives you like extra money for your living costs for your studies here. And that's the first factor, right? That's the first thing I considered, is the scholarship they gave. And the second one is that, honestly, of course, I looked at rankings. I know a lot of you are probably looking to unis. If you haven't looked at rankings, you will at some point, or your parents will miss. A lot of parents would care about the ranking part. And that also, I can't say it didn't go into my consideration of CityU, because CityU is actually rated quite high in terms of the QS rankings, for example, is like top 50. So that number is like impressive to me. And I also thought about how it was one of, at least the claims, and I can kind of see that it's one of the most international universities in the world. And I can kind of see that there's a lot of people from, actually the biggest international population after Indians here is actually Indonesians. So after that, there's a lot of Koreans here too. A lot of people from Kazakhstan and South Africa also. And yeah, just a lot of exchange students also coming in and out every semester in CityU. But I would say in Hong Kong in general, there are a lot of international students roaming around in the other unis too. So there's a lot of opportunities also to join student clubs in CityU and in other unis in Hong Kong that will expose you to these other students in other Hong Kong universities. So it's a very international exposure in terms of the people you can meet here. So that's another factor I considered. So that's two, right? So first first scholarship and then rankings. And the third major factor I considered is that Hong Kong, I went here once before I went here for uni, and I just thought it was a really nice place to live because it's very city-like, but there's also a lot of quieter places that you can kind of go to if you want to chill day out away from the commotion. So in terms of relaxing outside of school and outside of just classes, I think Hong Kong can give you that also. So there's a good balance here, I would say. That's the word, balance. I think the balance is good here. Living here also as a student, I've learned that classes sometimes, even since the international community here, especially the Indonesian community, is very tight. We're very close, and classes, you can usually group up with your friends, and it's much more enjoyable, right? With people, especially in the same major. And so even classes being a little more enjoyable with that. Outside of that, you have a lot of opportunities to go out into and explore Hong Kong. There's just a lot of areas, and I don't think I've covered half of the MTR stations I could go to. But Yeah, I just think there's a lot of leisure like opportunity here, but there's also you can also focus in your studies a lot, especially since for CityU at least the library is so close when you live in dorm, and they give you a desk in your room. I'll talk a bit more about dorm and how much years you get in it and how much it costs later. But yeah, so my third factor why I picked CityU, I derailed a bit there, but the third factor is that Hong Kong is just a nice place to have that balance. And on top of that, the cost of living is much cheaper relative to other countries that you can pick to study abroad, right? Because in here, the range is probably around 2,500 to 6,000, I would say. Now, 6,000 is a very high end of the range. I'd say a lot of me and my friends, probably around 4,000 Hong Kong dollars is like the average, I would say. 4,000, 3,500 to 4,000 is the average that we spend here for 1 month. And that's if you go out like half the time to eat. But I know a friend who never reached 3,000 Hong Kong dollars every month, which is impressive. So one Hong Kong dollar, by the way, is 1,800 rupiah. And yeah, it's just pretty cheap actually, especially compared to other study abroad options. But of course, a little bit more expensive than studying in Indo. So other than that, oh yeah, about cost of living, dorm is also guaranteed, by the way, for the first 2 years out of your 4 years of studying here. And that's only if you take the standard 4-year study. Some people get 3 years advanced standing, that's what it's called here, in which if your high school is very advanced in terms of the content that it already covers some that you would learn in uni, then you can request for advanced standing when you're applying. It's got advanced standing 1 or advanced standing 2. That's even more like if you already covered even more in high school. You can apply for that and you'll get 3 years of uni instead of 4. So you can finish uni early and then you go straight to work. So that's a little bit about the difference between advanced standing and just applying normal 4 years study, which most students do. But yeah, you can do that too. That's an option. So back to what I was talking about, dormitory, right? So dorm or student residence here is guaranteed for the first 2 out of your 4 years. So you'll definitely, for the first and second year of studying, you will get a dorm room, and you can pick either a single room or double room, and you can pick the hall. There's 9 halls in this huge student residence circle. I'm actually in a dorm room right now. And you can pick the roommate you want to be if you already know someone coming with you from Indo, for example, or you know someone prior to coming to CityU, you can roommate with them. You just have to request it in the CityU system when you're applying. And there's also options, of course, to stay in a fully female or a fully male floor, which is very flexible. But the main point is that dorm is very cheap, especially compared to rent outside in Hong Kong, because rent outside is known to be quite expensive. But for dorm, you'll get 2 years out of 4 guaranteed, and you can get a 3rd and 4th year, but that's depending on how active you are in your first 2 years. So you can make your stay in Hong Kong really cheap depending on how active you are in your student residence experience in like your first 2 years, whether you make any events in hall, or what can you do? You can be like the president of the association in the halls, or at least like the executive committee. They'll gain you points. And if you get enough points, then you can stay for the 3rd year and save a lot instead of going out and renting a place. So yeah, the cost of living in Hong Kong, it depends on you. It depends on each person, but I would say they are quite cheap compared to other places that you can study abroad in. So that's definitely something I considered going here. Now I've talked a little bit too much on what were the factors I consider. I hope not, but now I'll just go straight into how do you apply to CityU, right? And actually this was quite easy, especially compared to other unis I've applied to. That is because the scholarship here is very easy to apply to. When you apply as a student, they immediately consider you as a scholarship applicant also. So if you haven't started your uni applications, then you would find out that for a lot of unis, if you want to apply to the scholarship, you have to apply to be a student in some program, like you pick your subject and then you apply there. But usually they also require you to apply to a scholarship. You have to give financial documents. You have to give like another essay for the scholarship. A lot of unis I applied to did that. But for CityU, I did not have to do any extra essays, any extra application. I just applied to the main program. I just applied to mechanical engineering to be a student for the 4-year program. And what I gave to do that was, okay, no, I'm actually going to talk about my high school curriculum first because I did not use the UN. And I used this Australian curriculum and I graduated in November. So I just had to give my grades. I did not have to give predicted grades or anything. And aside from that, some other documents, which I'll go into one by one, but I'm just telling you first that I did not go through the standard procedure, but most of the Indonesian students here, and there are a lot, went through that one. So I think all the documentation is in the CityU website. Should be pretty clear because there's a lot of Indo students here. So the procedure is usually that you have to give your ijazah, and it has to be translated to English. Everything has to be translated to English, actually, every document you upload. So there's the ijazah, and you have to give your grades, basically your report card. And if you haven't get your final grades, you have to give your predicted grades. And you also have to give the SKH-UN. Wait, since that doesn't exist anymore, I think, then you have to check on the website and see what's the replacement for that, because I'm not sure. But I think it just certificate of graduation works. For me, it was my certificate of graduation. And after that, you have to give a personal statement. That's basically an essay just saying why you deserve this spot, or why they should pick you as their student in this program that you're applying to. So that's the personal statement. I forgot how many words it should be, but I don't think it was very long compared to other universities I applied to. And lastly, so the ijazah, report, and certificate of graduation, personal statement or essay. And the last one is recommendation letter from a teacher. So I think those are the 5 things. There may be more. I think everything's documented in CityU's website, so you can check. And again, you don't have to apply for a separate application for a scholarship. And you just give these 5 things and apply as a normal student, and they'll consider you for the scholarship. So it's very easy. There's no harm in applying, right? So you should try. You may get a scholarship, one of the 3 types. And who knows, it's going to be a heavy choice when you're thinking which uni should you go to. Okay, so that is how you apply to City University of Hong Kong. And now I'm going to talk about the next question here is, what are the pros and cons of studying abroad? Okay, this is a pretty broad question, but I think I have to, the first pro that would come to my mind is probably that it just, of course, it trains you to be more independent. Going out by yourself, it makes you, you have to learn how to fend for yourself. And it's in that you also just find a lot of people that really gel with you while you're just on your way to do that, you know? So that's the biggest pro. I think it makes you grow. It forces you to grow a lot faster to go out and fend for yourself abroad. And the cons is that it's actually it's just the synonym of that, just the opposite, is that you're a little bit farther from home. And I know for myself, that got a bit hard this year, actually, because when I came here, I had to do 3 weeks of quarantine. At least I could do it with like 2 other friends in one hotel room. So that was a bit fun. But I can't go back now, right? Because the situation is pretty bad there. And so that's a bit hard in terms of how I can't see my family for the foreseeable future, unless when I want to come back, I want to do quarantine again, because that part's a bit expensive, especially considering hotels here is quite expensive. And you have to also think about food, which has to be hotel provided. And that's also added to the expense. So the main con of studying abroad in these times is that it can be a bit complicated going back and forth, even though Hong Kong and Indonesia are so close. And another con is that in terms of far from home, at least in the first year, if you know, there's the Hong Kong protests, I had to go back to Indonesia. And then after that, there was the COVID straight after, I had to go back. So those kind of things, is there's like emergency situations, it also gets complicated. You have to pay a little more to go back and forth. And that's another con. It may get complicated if there's emergency situations, which happens to happen a lot these past 3 years. But other than that, I think the pros really overlap the cons of studying abroad so far for me personally. And that's all my thoughts about studying abroad, actually. So I recommend it. Next, can you work and study at the same time? Yes. Okay. I don't know why I paused there, but we can work and study at the same time in Hong Kong. When you go in Hong Kong, you will actually get this no objection letter, is what they call it, from immigration in the airport. What that letter gives you is permission to work part-time or full-time in an internship or a job. It doesn't really matter, but that should be inside summer. So when your summer starts, your summer holiday, that's when you can start working, because the letter allows you to do that. And aside from that, you can also ask for permission to work while you're studying, but that requires you to request that from the university. So they'll give you a document to allow that, but it has to be under the name of internship. So you can do part-time or full-time internships. I know some friends right now that are doing like work from home internships of Indonesian companies and like international companies also. So that's also an option. If it could either be online or you can work offline. Like me, I've been working in a coding company for this summer, and that is offline so far. And the thing about, I've mentioned this before, Hong Kong cost of living, cheap relatively to other countries, but of course a little higher than Indo. But if you start working in the summer, you can start thinking about how the wage, especially the minimum wage here, really covers that cost of living. So you can use that money to cover a bit of your cost of living in the summer. And yeah, it really balances out, I would say. So yes, the major answer to can you work and study here at the same time is yes. And that comes up really useful as you go through your uni life. Okay, so that's actually one of the last questions I have here. And the last thing I have on my list is, do I have any message, tips, or tricks for you all who are going into uni? Okay, so I think my major message would be that I just know that when I was applying to unis in that like final year, I think the most stressful, I was not even in the final exams for school or anything, but it was like picking what major, what uni I want, where I should go. And I thought I was like all alone in it, in that I thought like everyone sort of already are fixing their major. I know some people who were confused, but I didn't think, wow, I just thought I was like so behind. I thought I was, wow, I don't know. Like I'm super not sure about my major. I'm super not sure about my school. I was very stressed, but I think if I can tell myself back then anything right now, I'd just say, I don't know if she'd listen to me, but I try to remind her that a lot of people also have doubts. And I remember a friend had to get mad at me for me to actually like really take that in, that a lot of people also just are not sure. A lot of people around you are not sure about their choice of major and their choice of uni. So it's all about going on your own pace and just making sure that you just stay ahead of your deadlines also. So you just meet your deadlines, like at least do your research, stay ahead of your deadlines, and just keep, don't be too stressed, at least. I think that's my only message. But yeah, I think that's all for me. And I hope my information session was useful to you all, and that more of you think about Hong Kong as an option to go to Union, because it's a really good place. And there's a lot of international exposure, but there's also a lot of Indo students to remind you and we're all in Hong Kong, kind of all, this is just huge network that's very tight. If you're afraid to feel like too far from home, we are all sort of here. So I hope you consider Hong Kong as an option. That's all for me so far. So thank you.